So one thing that I wanted to talk about is I had this like my last tweet before I quit Twitter. Like the last thing I tweeted was about this video on Piers Morgan Uncensored. I said Piers Unmorgan, Piers Unmorgan Censored, um, Piers Morgan Uncensored, um, about trans rights, which was part of the moment that I decided, okay, this is pointless, was because that tweet got like 1,000 impressions, and it was, really strange. Because normally I would have gotten a lot of response to that. But anyway, someone says Piers Morgan censored. Yeah, I sure wish they would. um, so it's funny the role that like Piers Morgan plays, right? Because like um, he likes to say, "Oh, I invite people on both sides." So, like for example, on Gaza, like, "Oh, I always have someone who's pro-Palestine alongside the pro-Israel, so that I can like both sides the genocide." So I feel like he invites people knowing, having a plan, right? So I actually thought this is what happened in this video that I shared. Let me share it with you because I feel like so it's about trans rights, and it's the typical exchange that you would see um, on um, on these kinds of shows. It's Piers Morgan basically losing his patience with his guest and saying, "Oh, you know what? Define what a woman is," and it's just something that I thought worthwhile commenting on. Um, in terms of like strategy about how to engage with like these kinds of like traps that people like Piers Morgan set out to their guests. Okay, so shall we watch this and talk about it for a second?
I'll ask you a question, a simple
Sure. What are
question.
you talking
Give me a simple answer, Jojo. What is a woman, Jojo?
Yes. Well, a woman is whatever. If you feel like you're a woman, then you're a woman. I know I'm a woman. I identify as a woman.
So if I feel
know
like
what
a
that
woman
means
right
to
now,
me.
I'm a woman?
I'm not threatened.
Hang on.
What would you
If
feel
you
like?
feel like you're a woman,
Hang
it's
on.
your identity,
If I-
sure.
so hang on,
If
just to be clear,
I'm sorry, what's
heard
a
you.
man? Piers, what's your
Just to
definition
be
of a
clear,
man?
just
I'm
to
a
be
woman.
clear,
What's your
just to be
definition
clear,
of a man?
So just to be clear, if I feel like a woman right now, I am a woman. Is that your position?
And if you feel like you are a woman, Piers, and you want to walk around identifying as a woman, it is not
Yeah.
my prerogative to tell you that you
Am
cannot.
I a woman?
I identify
Am I a
as
woman?
a woman. What is
Am
a
I a
man,
woman?
Piers? What is a man?
Oh, a man
Is
is
Donald
an
Trump
adult
a man?
human.
Can I,
That's it.
Piers, can I jump
Male.
into that question?
Adult
An adult
human,
human.
male.
An adult human male.
Piers.
Adult human male is a man.
An adult
yes.
human male.
Can I
Yes.
finally
Piers,
get
And a
can I answer
woman
that?
Like
is an
55
adult
pounds of cake
human
makeup and fine,
female.
right.
Adult
Can I finally
human
get to say
female.
You're
something?
asking what a woman is.
Adult
I am a woman.
human
I identify
male.
as a woman.
Okay,
Can I
but just to
raise
be
my
clear,
hand?
Piers, can I answer that
yes,
question?
hang on, Matt. I'm going to bring Matt in. I just want to just
Oh, Matt,
sorry to
you
double
really
down
need
on
to
this.
stay out of this one, friend.
I just want to be clear,
You
Jojo.
don't want to go here, Matt.
Jojo
Sorry.
said if you feel like a woman, you're a woman. So, Jojo,
Yeah.
final time. If I now say
It's
I
an
feel like a
identity.
woman.
It's not about
No, sorry,
biology.
I'm
It's
asking
an
you a
identity,
question. Stop
Piers.
talking. If I now say I feel like a woman, am I a woman? Am I a woman if I say
If
I
you
feel
feel like a
one?
woman, you're a woman.
Wow.
What does that mean, though? What does that even mean?
Salamander, I'm so sorry. But I welcome your perspective on all of this because like I have thoughts about this. I saw it and I was like, I feel like this is a setup. So he knows that I don't know who the guest is, this Jojo, but I'm pretty sure that he knows what Jojo thinks, and that's why he invites her because he wants to have this moment. So I was thinking, right, like how to avoid these like traps. Why is it that like because look, um I feel like this whole definition business comes down to essentially Aristotle and Plato. Comes to like the very core of Western ideas um, about how to approach the natural world, right? In particularly in the Western episteme, in the Western way of thinking, we like to think And I say we because like I think the Western way of thinking is global at this point. But we as a society, we like to think that everything is taxonomizable. Everything has a taxonomy. There's an animal kingdom, and then there is a plant kingdom, and there's a mushroom kingdom, and well, everything can be neatly allotted into these different categories. So I want to bring Salamander here because Salamander's views are relevant here. So, oh yeah, 100%. The also I can just say I'm a woman is a traditional anti-trans rhetorical point because it's so hard to succinctly answer without having to explain a gender studies course in less than a minute. Yes, that was going to be my point, because the answer is, well, the notion of woman as an identity category is constructed and is associated with biological sex, is equally constructed, but that's mocked even more as so you don't think sex is real. Yes. Oh, hey, Bernhard, how are you? Yes, Pierce does read Judith Butler. Judith Butler is awesome, but so again, Salamander's point is very valid. We can't explain a class on gender studies in 1 minute. So what do we do? Because these questions are going to keep on popping up. Most things can be answered by go read Judith Butler. Yeah, but a lot of things can indeed. But again, I think this goes all the way back to taxonomy and ancient Greece and the West. In the West, we like to think that everything is taxonomizable, and so you're asked like, what is a fruit and what is a vegetable, right? What is a fruit and what is a vegetable? And we tend to think that that is a neatly defined. You observe nature, you extract from nature those immanent, inherent rules to nature, and then you say, well, a fruit is a sweet, fleshy, plant that you can eat its insides and has a seed inside. And a vegetable is eatable plants that don't have seeds and aren't fleshy, right? So lettuce is a vegetable, and an apple is a fruit. Okay, what about a tomato? It's a vegetable, goes in a vegetable salad, but it's a fruit because it has a fleshy inside and seeds. So we class the tomato as a fruit, but we treat it as a vegetable. And the taxonomy is broken down because you cannot classify the entire natural world perfectly without any contradictions. You need to create exceptions. So Adara, I would recommend Gender Trouble. Start with Gender Trouble for Judith Butler. So you cannot classify the entire world, right? It's the same. There's I don't know how to say this in English because I learned it in Spanish, but there's like vivíparos, like I don't know, beings that give birth, and oviparos, beings that put eggs, right? Chenkov says nobody who seriously classifies plants uses the category vegetable. I mean, worse even, right? And then you have in this neat classification between those who put eggs and those who give birth. Then you have the platypus, the echidna, and again the taxonomy is broken, and you need to create an exception so that you can classify the entire world. So classification is in itself a construct. There is no such thing as the full encyclopedia of nature with all the rules, the universal rules of nature. That doesn't exist. It also doesn't exist with, for example, history. The people in the 1800s liked to think that, oh, if we do enough history, if we collect enough facts, we will eventually arrive at this ultimate history, the book of the world, right? The book of the world, where what happens is all the possible iterations of the events of history will be recorded in this book, and we will have final history, all the historical facts collected. That was the empiricist school of the 1800s. Now we know that is impossible, because the historian, when the historian reads the facts, there's an editorializing going on. There's a specific way in which the act of looking back into history changes history. Right? So there's no such thing as a pure reporting of history. So there will never be absolute ultimate history. You cannot taxonomize everything. But we are meant to believe that we can taxonomize everything, that we can fully understand human nature. And worse even, usually the first measure of this taxonomy is observation. What do you see? Right? So most people have conformed into thinking, yeah, man and woman. That's it. There's a man and there's a woman. So obviously, there needs to be a way that you can define objectively what is a man and what is a woman. That is the way that the Western episteme makes us approach our observation that, oh, when I walk around the street, I see people that I classify as man and woman. And when there's something that isn't conforming to what I expect a man to do and a woman to do because they are gay or because they are trans or because they are, I don't know, bisexual or because they are asexual or whatever diversity you encounter, oh no, that's a deviance. It's not conforming to the taxonomy. So I think when the problem ends up being that when someone asks you, like, okay, so then define what is a woman, I think that is a trap, because I'm not the one, like my side is not the one that says, oh yeah, you can objectively define everything in the world. Right? It's your side, the conservative side, that thinks that you can define everything in the world. So you need to offer a definition. And so this is when it becomes interesting, because yes, granted, self-identification. Cherenkov says, is this a delayed March 8th stream? I don't know. This is I get mad at Piers Morgan often stream. So I'll admit, like, self-identification is not intuitive. Right? You see Piers Morgan's reaction. It's not intuitive to think, like, what do you mean that if you identify as a woman, you are a woman? So does that mean that I can be a woman now? It's a bad faith rhetorical argument, because of course Piers Morgan does not feel like a woman, right? But the reason why self-ID is where we end up is not because it is the objective definition of a woman based on this idea that you can taxonomize the entire world, or a man for that matter. It's like, I'm aware that I'm a cis, bro male, talking about what is a woman. So but like I'm trying I'm trying to do good here. So I hope you'll excuse the fact that I'm doing this. But like, it is not intuitive. But there's a reason why we end up with the standard for identifying a man or a woman with self-ID. And it's important to pull the person asking the question, okay, so you wacko, you define what is a woman, then you woke crazy person. It's important to pull them out of that, dynamic and say, no, wait a minute. I'm not the one who claims that can define what is a woman. Self-ID is not an objective definition of woman. By its very nature, it's subjective. So no, I'm not claiming that I can define a woman. You need to tell me, how do you define a woman? And then I can tell you why that definition cannot work as a universal taxonomy. And then you can offer another one, and I'll tell you how that definition also cannot work as a universal taxonomy for the human experience. And it doesn't matter how many definitions you offer me, they will never work as a full definition of like the human experience. Because you cannot grab human complexity and simplify it into simple rules. Cherenkov says, also bro. To be fair, I've never been a bro. I've always hung out with more girls than boys. But so I'll catch up with the chat because I know I'm late with that. But like, so yeah, you cannot reduce human complexity. What's a giga chat? Oh, I'm learning stuff today. But hey, Rosova, by the way, how are you? So you cannot reduce human complexity to a simple set of rules that are objective. So I would rather, instead of like trying to say like, oh, this is my definition of a woman, I would say, okay, what is your definition of a woman? And so Piers Morgan gives a definition. He makes it sound like, duh, of course this is a woman. It's like adult human female, which is a terrible definition. Because like you can grab every single one of those identifiers and deconstruct it and end up in the same problem. So if you start like adult human female, okay, what is an adult? Remember, we're trying to define objectively what is a woman. What is objectively an adult? You can tell me what is objectively an adult in the United Kingdom. We have rules about age of majority, and so we determine that. Well, the UK determines that the definition of adult is someone over 18. But there's another country that says no, it's actually 16. And then there are other cultures that say no, you know what? It's like whatever social rule exists, to determine who is an adult. Like you have a bar mitzvah, you're an adult. You have you killed your first boar, you're an adult. So is there an objective, universal definition of adult? We sort of have to end up with like subjective, relative definitions of adulthood in each society, right? Because we don't really know objectively when is someone an adult, and adulthood can mean different things for different purposes. Like you can be an adult for the purposes of religion in your bar mitzvah. That doesn't mean that you're an adult for the purposes of having sex. There's like statutory rape rules still applying because you're still 13, right? Or for drinking. In the United States, you can be an adult and yet you cannot drink until you're 21, but you can drive since you're 16. So do we have an objective definition of what is an adult? Okay, you can bring in science. Scientifically, when does science say that you are an adult? Okay, but when you start with all this plethora of possible definitions of adulthood, then you're thinking maybe saying adult is not the best definition that we have for, defining things. You can tell me that, I don't know, the UK defines a woman as an adult human female, and adult means 18. Sure, I have no complaints. But is that an objective, universalizable definition? No, it isn't. There says also what is an adult is actually very fluid. It doesn't just depend on the law, but law might just change by state and by circumstances. Yeah, exactly. So unless you can provide me with like, I don't know, an objective definition of adult, then adult is a bad definition, is a bad criteria for definition, right? Because it varies so much. Human. What is a human is a major question in philosophy, right? For the longest time, people of color were not considered human. Famously, in the U.S. Constitution, they were considered 3/5 of a person. Does that mean that there were 3/5 of a woman? Does that mean that there were no women among the enslaved black populations because they were not seen as fully human? So women in the 1700s were white women, and that's it. Is that the argument? So again, adult, not a good definition, not a good criteria for definition. Human, probably also not a good definition element for definition. And then you get to the big one. What is female? You cannot define the term female in the same way as you define woman, because that would be cacophonous. That would be circular argument. What is a woman? A female. What is a female? A woman. So what is a female ends up being a proxy for the question, what is a woman? So you would need to ask, okay, what is a female? And here's when it gets tricky, because again, there is no objective definition of female. What Piers Morgan wants to say is, probably, I don't know, what anti-trans people want to say is female is the gentler sex that has kids, takes care of the kids, and cooks dinner for the husband, right? That's a female, because they attach to femininity all of these stereotypes and prejudices about the role of women in society. So that's like basic feminism. That's like the second sex, Simone de Beauvoir levels of basic feminism, that you should not define female or woman based on her oppression, right? You should not define her in terms of the patriarchy. You should not define her in terms of like their social role, because their social role is constructed. If a woman doesn't want to have kids, doesn't want to get married, and loves to box, they're still female. They're still a woman, right? So that those stereotypes are not a proper definition for female. So what is? This is when it starts to get very scientificist, not in a good way. Oh, it's those that have female reproductive organs. Well, I mean, what about intersex people? There are humans that are born with, both organs. Oh no, but you need to check their chromosomes. Is XX or XY? What about XXY? There are people who have both chromosomes. Oh no, there's like those who produce large gametes. Like there's all of these definitions end up excluding a large chunk of the population of women. This is why Caster Semenya, this athlete, is excluded from female sports, even though if I'm not mistaken, they are intersex, and I think they and they identify as female, so she um, is intersex, right? So or this Imam, am I saying this correctly? Imam Khalif, the Algerian boxer who was born into a household that identified her as female. She identifies as female, lived her entire life as a female, but J.K. Rowling says that she has the wrong genes. Right? So you get into these like ridiculous contradictions about what is a female, which then replaces the question, what is a woman? So adult human female, terrible definition. Doesn't answer the question. It just pushes the question one further step. So what is a female? Terrible definitions with the chromosomes, with the genes, with the gametes, all of those end up excluding someone that usually even is cis, as a cis woman, not even a trans woman, right? So everyone ends up being, so many people end up being excluded. So there is no easy way of identifying. Of course, you can create your own definition of a woman for legal purposes. You can create your own definition of a woman for your, for your private purposes. But an objective, ontologically objective definition of a woman, I don't think we can, because we cannot taxonomize the entirety of human existence. It doesn't work that way. And that, Iman Khalif isn't even intersex. I mean, it's a genetic argument that J.K. Rowling is making. So you end up with this scenario where, to know if someone is a woman or not, then you need to essentially do a DNA test on. So I cannot know if J.K. Rowling is a woman because she hasn't offered her genetic testing to me. It's that ridiculous. And so maybe J.K. Rowling is not a woman because she hasn't genetically tested yet. How many gender critical, trans exclusionary people would not meet their own definition of womanhood because they haven't tested genetically yet, and there's like 1% of the population that has some sort of like genetic trait that doesn't conform to the definition of womanhood. So there is, because of this like impossibility of taxonomizing all of human experience, all of human nature, self-ID becomes the only practical way in which we can ontologically define what is a woman. Because when you go down the street, when you're walking out in the street and you look at people, you don't really go like, does that person have large or small gametes? Right? You don't do that. You don't go around and say, I need to see that person's genetic testing to see if they're a woman. You don't do that. I wonder if that person wants to have kids. No, you just look at people and your brain sort of like interiorizes male, female, male, female, male, female. Because you associate specific exterior manifestations as male or female. And we have to sort of like understand and deconstruct that that is not really what defines male or female. Right? So, as some of says, speak for yourself. I'm always on that gamete raider grind. But so, if that is the reality, if like we sort of like, I guess, know or assume, and therefore, and we shouldn't assume, but like we in the world, before you can even talk to someone, sort of like assume you see this constructed femininity out there and say, oh, female. Right? Then the only way to reflect that in any kind of like reasonable way in the absence of a perfect taxonomy is self-ID. It's not an objective definition of woman. It's a fallback because we cannot actually define ontologically what is a woman. Like you can, of course, legally define what is a woman. You can say woman is whichever person has an F in their ID. Okay. But ontologically, like per se, no. Right? So self-ID, when someone asks you, so what is a woman? The response should not be, oh, whatever you identify with, because that's not a definition of a woman. That is a fallback, a response to the impossibility of objectively and ontologically defining and categorizing and taxonomizing humanity. So it's the other way around. It's, wait a minute, Piers. What do you think it's a woman? Because I don't claim that I can objectively define woman in one single phrase. I don't claim that. I don't think I can do that. I don't think we'll ever be able to. Humanity is too complex. I don't claim that everything is taxonomizable. You're the one who claims it. So you offer your definition and I can tell you why it's wrong. And eventually, he'll offer a definition, you'll push back, you get the initiative, and then they'll offer another one, and another one, and another one, and they will all fail. So eventually, the point of self-ID will make itself. So I don't want to be too critical. Like I don't think it's this person's fault, of course. This Jojo's person. So I'm not really criticizing her. I'm just saying strategically, it's a bad strategy to engage with that question. Because if you're asking me to define a woman, then the correct answer is, I don't really think we can ontologically and objectively define what a woman is. That's you, that's your side, that's what you claim, not what I claim. My claim is Judith Butler's claim, that a woman is not born, but made by society. A woman is whichever person ends up associated with the kinds of expectations, oppressions, roles, images that a woman is expected to be like in society. It's something that is imposed on people, right? A woman is made, not born, is the main claim of gender studies theory. Right, and if a woman is made, not born, then I'm not sure I can objectively define who gets made into a woman. So it's a problem to engage with that question. So I thought I would like share that because it's so frustrating how it's always that gotcha moment. Okay, let me catch up with the chat because I saw there was a discussion about whether a tomato was a fruit at some point. So Cherenkov says, I think the proper reply is nobody would believe you saying that, Morgan, regardless of what you really felt about your body. Sure. Although I don't like that idea of like, oh, I don't believe you when you say that you are, you identify as a woman. So that can backfire. Salamander says, right, the idea of male-female being a firm biological binary, which one, intersex people, two, who decided that these biological features equals female. Yeah, exactly. Because it's constructed. It's like again, these identities are made. They're not born. To the point where there are societies where there's third genders. Well, Dara says, which Judith Butler? Oh, I said that already. Salamander says, I think what's also valuable is pointing out that they're using a common rhetorical fallacy, saying, no, this is a pointless talking point. You're engaging in bad faith by using that argument. Another very useful philosophy to video on this topic, social constructs, or what is a woman really. Or says, having a baby as a teenager makes you an adult who can make decisions for another child, yet you still can't buy alcohol. Yeah, true. Also, like, there's this whole thing about like how children are often treated as adults in the criminal system or in war, right? Just think of like the dehumanization of Palestinians and how 17-year-old Palestinians are like, oh, these are not children because they're 17. I mean, well, definition of a child is anyone under 18 under the, you know, rights of UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So again, you can have these like practical definitions of adult, but you cannot really have an ontological definition. Even the international legal definition is weird because while you have 18 in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, in international humanitarian law, states can recruit people to their armies as of the age of 16. So those are not children. They're not child soldiers. So even in international law, there's two definitions of adult. One for war, one for peace. Salamander says, well, intersex people are a small outlier. It's estimated that the percentage for intersex people is about the same as ginger people. Oh, wow, really? Lots of people never know they are intersex. And it's no coincidence that Caster Semenya, as with other transvestigated athletes, is black. And Iman being brown. Again, the male-female boundary is racialized. Absolutely. Yeah, this is a very important point. Often what happens is that racialized women don't fit into people's like racist people's expectations of what a female body should look like, and so they get transvestigated. I mean, honestly, the fact that transvestigation even exists as a practice sort of proves that you cannot have an objective definition, because otherwise you wouldn't need to transvestigate, right? Someone says, same as humanity is racialized. Yeah, the work of Aicha Chobukchu sort of proves it, right? Charikov says, I think you're overstating things, Alonso. Of course, you can categorize all of human existence. The problem is you will always end up with edge cases that feel weird. So it degenerates at the game of arguing that the edge cases are important. Salamander says, of course, edge cases are important. Those are also modes of human existence. If they disrupt a category, then the category is flawed. I sort of agree with Salamander here. Maybe I'm too post-structuralist, but I sort of agree with Salamander here that, like, sure, like, you have this, like, so I've heard this argument before. I have a good friend of mine who made this argument saying, like, yes, sex is not a bimodal category. It is more like what do you call it? Like, it's not binary. It's what was the word he used? Like, there's a threshold, right? But the in betweens, a spectrum, sure. The in betweens, the two sex are so small that in practice, it is bimodal. It is like a binary, right? So I can see why looking at sex and gender in that way could be necessary from a scientific perspective, even though I would still claim, well, that there was a study that concluded early on in the history of seatbelts, concluded that seatbelts had not been tested on female bodies, and so early seatbelts injured women horrifically because they didn't anticipate the fact that some humans have breasts. So these outliers, I can understand when you need to do like large models why like these outliers you should like probably frame them in their due let's say perspective or influence within your model. I can get that, but it's sort of like if you want to define ontologically human experience, like again, not legally, not um, practically, but ontologically define human experience, then yeah, you're going to end up with a bunch of like seatbelts that kill women because you just didn't factor in these like quote unquote exceptions, right? So it doesn't matter how few the in-betweens quote unquote are, they still exist. There's still a mode of human existence, like Salamander says. So you need to account for them, or you're not really accounting for all modes of human existence. So I guess the only hope for Cherenkov is to have so many exceptions to account for all the variations that sure, you can end up with the encyclopedia of human nature. Okay, but it will be so full of asterisks that it won't be what you're looking for. So Cherenkov says, you can likewise dispute the chair is unambiguous. Artists make really weird stuff after all, but that's not enough to make chair a really disputed category. So this goes back to Plato, right? Plato made that, was it Plato? Aristotle. Aristotle made that argument that there's a specific chairness to chairs. But there's a at some point, if you remove the accidents of a concept, you essentially will get to the structure, to the core, and you'll be able to define it as a core. So a chair is a object, usually that you can sit in with a back, right? And it's different from, say, a swing, because a swing hangs. It's not standing on pedestals or legs. And it's different from a stool, because the stool doesn't have a back. So at some point, you will be able to get to the inherent structure of everything. And therefore, you will have arrived at your definition. This is a chair. And I mean, there's, like you say, right, there's so many different ways of making a chair. That there are, I've seen chairs that look like stools because the back support is so small that it looks like a stool. So you can always find, you can always push a concept. And again, maybe I'm too post-structuralist, but I'm not convinced that there's an inherent chairness to chairs. There are objects that you can easily define. Yeah, you can easily define some things. But not everything. Not everything can be taxonomized. Destiny, oh god, nothing good can start with that. Destiny was arguing that even 13-year-old Palestinians aren't children if they're holding weapons. Yeah, like I said, nothing good can start with Destiny. Salamander says, ugh, Destiny. Same mind today, Salamander. Bernhard says, so his argument was that childhood is at least partly defined by whether someone is armed. Yeah, absolutely. Saying that something is important, says Cherenkov, requires imposing a well-defined metric. Sometimes that metric will make edge cases important, sometimes not. Cherenkov says, no, that's Plato on the forums. Okay, yeah, Plato, not Aristotle. My bad. Plato argued that Aristotle tried to define things by the purpose rather than by idea. Yeah, I haven't brushed up on my like ancient philosophy in a while. Alonso Van says, chair can be a disputed category though. Check out Natural Categories by Eleanor Roche. Yeah, exactly. Again, maybe I'm too post-structuralist, but I don't think there's an inherent chairness to chairs. Someone says the idea that a chair is what we call a thing we sit on is constructed too. But yeah, so essentially my point in this like very long detour is that we shouldn't engage with this gotcha question of what is a woman. It's on the contrary, you define what is a woman, because I'm not claiming that I can define it. It's just that people sort of have interiorized that self-ID is the definition of a woman, and that's not it. Self-ID is the rhetorical argument that we use to solve the impossibility of ontologically defining what is a woman. So if someone asks you what is a woman, the response should be, I mean, I don't know, a woman is the people who have been constructed and made to be women in society. So I cannot objectively define that. You claim you can, so give me your definition and I will evaluate it. I think that's a better way out of this debate. So hopefully the next time Piers Morgan asks someone to define a woman, then they will be able to say, no, no, you need to define a woman, and I need to tell you why this definition doesn't work and why we need self-ID to solve that impossibility. Someone says TLDR. Yeah, TLDR that. Okay, so that covers the video part. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like content like this and you would like to see more, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can also come to one of my live streams or join my Discord server. It's really great that you're here because we're really trying to grow this community and turn it into a space where we can all come together to discuss about international law and international relations. So really thank you for your support. Until next time.